Whoa.
Hello and welcome to My Tiny Bottles, the project where I'm exploring my grandmother's legacy of miniature liquor bottles, one tiny bottle at a time. I'm your host, Tammy Coxon, and I am here today with Alex Hildebrandt, and Alex is with SUYO Pisco. So why don't you introduce yourself to the folks?
Firstly, thanks for having me, Tammy. My name is Alex Hildebrandt, and I am the co-founder of SUYO Pisco. We are a single origin Pisco brand from Peru.
That is really exciting. And I had heard Alex on the Speakeasy podcast, and I have been trying to think for a while who would be the right person to taste Grandma's tiny bottle of Inca Pisco. And when I heard Alex, I was like, I think I have my taster. So thank you so much for joining me. So this bottle of Inca Pisco, you can see it's really fancy. This was a product that was available in the United States probably from about 1962 to 1980. And based on the tax strip, this bottle probably came from 1977. So in my episode about Inca Pisco, I kind of talked about the ebbs and flows of Pisco over time, in the United States market anyway, Pisco Punch during the gold rush in San Francisco, and then this period of kind of renaissance in the 60s and 70s. But how does that fit into Pisco history as you understand it?
So this particular bottle, I was not familiar with prior to this episode. I just in looking at it, I can tell that sounds about right what you're saying. I think this is super unique because of what it's actually made in, which is the huaco, which I know you've talked about in previous episodes. These are very, very common in Peru and very, very, play a very important role, I think, in the Pisco category as a whole in terms of what it used to be made from, which was clay, which ultimately was used to rest Pisco back in its heyday, which is very interesting. We talk about that a little bit later, but yeah, everything that you said, I think is really spot on.
Should we do a little tiny sidebar on what Pisco is for people who might not know?
Let's do it. Yeah, I think that's always a super helpful starting point. So for the listeners and viewers who are not familiar, Pisco is the national spirit of Peru. I know there is some folks out there who will also mention Chile there. We can talk about that as well. But
some other countries.
The Chile makes a product that is similar to Pisco as well, but very, very different at the same time. So it's our national spirit in Peru. It's made from grapes. Mm-hmm. It's a spirit. So unlike a wine, we first make a natural wine and then we distill that one time, and that's what makes it Pisco. What also makes it Pisco is where it comes from. So because of its denomination of origin, it has to come from one of 5 regions in Peru. Think of tequila, think of cognac, champagne, etc. And then lastly, it has to adhere to a very specific process. Yeah. I mentioned first it's a natural wine and then single distilled. Lastly, it's distilled 2 proof. So every single batch that you're having is going to be slightly unique because you can't proof it down with water.
That's interesting.
So technically, unless you're doing sort of a blend of harvests, you're going to have a slightly different ABV on every single release. And we really lean into that with our brand, which we'll talk about later.
Yeah, it's kind of like most traditional mezcal is also like that. So viewers of the project will know that I often have trouble getting into these little bottles. So we'll see. I've added some tools to my arsenal to make it easier. All right, so it looks like it has a little plastic cap of some sort. Do you think we pull that off or unscrew it? I think we pull it off.
That feels right.
And then what's going to happen? No idea.
You may need to give it one of those beer.
It's kind of common. I'm going to use my grippy thing because having a grip here seems like a good idea. Okay. Yeah. I got a little top piece off. That was it.
All right.
So a little plastic doohickey sitting over the top. Well, there's liquid inside. That's a good sign. All right, well, let's pour some. No idea how much liquid is in here.
Thank you.
That's the challenge with an opaque bottle. Okay, so now we have some Pisco. It is clear.
It's a good sign.
Right, Pisco is required to be.
First, we need to salud.
Salud. So what are we looking for?
So first of all, I always like to take a look at, and it's often helpful to look at it in a wine glass. Obviously, that's not always available, but it's good to look for a little bit of viscosity. I think that's always a good sign of a good quality Pisco. Not so easy to evaluate here. So next I would go to the nose.
It's got some legs.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's clean.
You can see that.
That's good.
You can see that. And the next on the nose, I think initially something I hope I'm not finding is volatility. You're hoping that it doesn't hit you too hard in the nose. This has been sitting in the bottle for so long that I think it's really, really mellowed out.
Yes. And that's been my experience with sometimes there's nothing there when you open it up, and it'll open up a little bit more as it gets some air.
Yeah.
Sometimes, like that top was very weird, right? That little thing. So like, would that have impacted? Has there been evaporation? Like, it's so hard to tell.
Yeah. This is super interesting. Typically when you're tasting a Pisco, you can, I can start to hypothesize about what we have here. Right now, I got nothing. I can't even make an educated guess on what we're drinking here.
Yeah, it doesn't, right. I mean, I wouldn't even necessarily know it was Pisco.
It's very, very, it smells very neutral. It doesn't, if I were to guess, it's not an aromatic grape. So in the Pisco category, you have non-aromatic grapes and you have aromatic grapes. My guess already is it's going to be a non-aromatic because it's not very floral.
Right. And if you think about the time period that this came from, right, 60s to 70s, people were drinking vodka. They were drinking white rum, right? They were switching to these lighter flavored spirits. So imagine if you were marketing a Pisco in the United States, you might not have been going for the one that tasted the most like Pisco.
Yep. And what I would say also, just looking at this, given the time frame, and because it doesn't say the name of the grape varietal, it's quite possible that they're using a grape varietal that doesn't exist today in Pisco production.
Right, or isn't allowed in the spec.
So it'll be really interesting to try it.
Could have just been the grapes grown in somebody's backyard, just whatever those are.
But you do see a lot of that still. Yeah. That's part of the fun of it. It's a very artisanal category still.
All right, we should probably just taste. I think so.
Whoa.
Starts off, it's super neutral. It starts off with what frequent listeners and viewers will know as the dusty bottle flavor that I get in a lot of these bottles. But then it actually transformed into something else. I'm getting this really earthy note.
So I'm glad you hit the dusty bottle note, because that is very, very strong. Earthy for sure. I'm getting clay. Mm-hmm. Almost as if this came straight out of, I mentioned that Pisco does allow for resting in clay, but typically you're going to filter it after that. Mm-hmm. So that gets rid of, you still get some of that minerality that shines through, but you're not getting that like really, really chalky taste. I'm getting some of that chalky, minerally taste here.
Especially on the second sip. My first sip, this is the first boozy thing I had today. And so my second sip, I was like, oh, okay, yeah. Now I'm tasting a little more, and you're right, it is this deep chalkiness. The bottle is not clay, it is glass. We can see that it is glass, so it's not like it's picked up something from being in the bottle.
Yep. And that chalkiness really, really stays with you.
Oh yeah.
So, the mouthfeel actually is, it feels about right, like you would get for a solid Pisco, but this lingering taste I'm getting afterwards, it's almost as if you were to, almost like you're licking a metal pole. It's got that like that iron kind of like ore type of almost like rusty taste to it. That isn't unpleasant necessarily, but it's very, very unique.
It's not at all what we would expect from Pisco.
Yeah. I don't think I can. So if I'm looking at this Pisco and I see that, or I thought I saw actually as I was looking at this bottle earlier.
Maybe online. So.
Yeah, maybe, in your previous episode talking about this, I think I saw that it was made in Ica. I may have made that up.
That sounds familiar to me too.
Okay, which is confusing because it's called Inca Pisco. These are different things. So Ica is the region where the port of Pisco actually is, and where it's sort of considered to be the epicenter of Pisco production. So if that's where it's from, my hunch would be that it's made from Quebranta. That's the name of the grape varietal. But truthfully, I can't, based on tasting this, I would not be able to identify that. Yeah. This may be another varietal that I'm not familiar with, which would be super fun.
And we also just have no idea how it's changed in the bottle, right? Exactly. What I say, pre-1977. So this is 50 years sitting in this bottle.
Yeah.
Who the heck knows? Well, so I know enough about Pisco to know this is not what Pisco is supposed to taste like. So maybe we should taste something.
Sure.
That'll taste a little more familiar.
Yeah.
Tell me about these awesome bottles. I will admit part of my inspiration in inviting you to do this is because I wanted to taste your Pisco.
Sure, let's get to it. I am going to do a quick rinse to get that sort of metallic taste out of my mouth.
Not sure that'll be good enough. We might have to sip Pisco twice.
That's a good point.
Wow. That is certainly a lingering earthiness.
Yep. And one thing I would note for the listeners too, and the viewers, is that if this really was from the 70s, this would have come out before the denomination of origin was actually established in Peru.
That decided what all those rules had.
What those rules were, exactly. Yeah. So that wasn't until even though Pisco's been produced for over 400 years now, it didn't get its denomination of origin until 1990. So we're really only 35 years into that official designation. So you just don't know. You're probably getting something very different.
Yeah.
So I'm going to start us off, Tammy, with the Quebranta, which is the varietal that I mentioned earlier.
You should come this way.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's good.
So
we've shifted towards the bottle.
Yeah, that's right. I'll bring the bottle to me. So the one that we're going to start off here that I'm holding towards the camera is called the Quebranta. This tends to be the most commonly found varietal in the category, I think, for a number of reasons. And one of those reasons is the reason we thought to use it as our first release when we launched SUYO. I think it tends to be the most approachable. It's very, very versatile for both sipping, but also for cocktail making. The grape varietal itself, which is called Quebranta, is a crossbreed of two grapes that were brought by the Spanish during the 1500s and is now truly unique to Peru for that reason.
So it's not grown anywhere else?
That's right.
That's cool.
There's a natural mutation that occurred in Peru. So because it's unique to Peru, I think there's this sense of pride behind this varietal.
Yeah.
And a comparison I like to make for any of the viewers out there who are familiar with mezcal is like the espadín of the mezcal. Quebranta is sort of our espadín of the Pisco category.
All right.
So we're going to go ahead and get started with this.
That sounds great.
And this particular release we're trying, as well as the next one that we'll try, both come from the same vineyard. All the Piscos that we make are single vineyards, so they only come from one plot of land, and they're also single vintage, so from 1 year. We really like to lean into the terroir that Pisco imparts that is imparted in the Piscos that we make.
And that sounds pretty unique for what you guys do, right? Are there many other producers who are making Pisco in that way?
You know, there are a couple out there who are, but I feel like they're not as vocal about it. And we are really trying to celebrate the fact that Pisco is a vintage product and that every single year does give you something distinct. It's unique that every year, because it's vintage based, like a wine, you're going to get something slightly different. It's consistent in that the through line notes are always going to be the same on a certain varietal from different years, but there's going to be very, very subtle differences that we really like to celebrate and that we love to talk about. So we're gonna notice a little bit of those today. This particular vineyard comes from is near the Pacific Ocean. It's right off the Pacific Ocean, so you get some minerality that you don't get in a lot of.
That is what I was going to say. That was going to be my first tasting note, was minerality. It's kind of like the clay, chalky metal notes on the old one, but in a nice way. Yep. Right? But there was almost a little bit of a mineral through line that was coming through for me here.
And similarly, you're getting some bright sort of citrus notes that are unique to, I believe, this region of Peru. A lot of the quebrantas that you taste in the market come from Ica, which is a region further south, and it's very dry and arid and a little bit more inland.
Okay.
When we started SUYO, we wanted to find something that was a little bit brighter. So we started further north, about 2 hours south of the capital city of Lima, a valley called Mala, and that's where both of these Piscos come from. Awesome. So you get those fun, bright notes, also some of that minerality because it's close to the ocean. Salud.
Salud. Well, that's really nice. Tastes recognizably of Pisco to me, but also unusual, right? It's not like, and I've tasted a handful of Piscos. I mean, it is a category that I quite enjoy, but I wouldn't say I'm an expert. But yeah, this has that, I'm drinking Pisco, but it also is a little bit more interesting or varied than maybe some of the others I've tried.
Yeah, and just to sort of make a comparison there, some of the other ones you may have tried that come from Ica typically have some of these drier sort of fruit compote notes that are really, really nice. This is just a little bit brighter, sort of green fruit notes that we like.
And I might not even be comparing it to a Quebranta, right?
That's right.
I just think,
it's very possible.
I knew that there were varieties of grapes used, and I knew that there were varietal Piscos available, but, generally I'd just have the ones, like this one is Pisco. Okay, so this is also Quebranta. There you go.
So that's Bartol Quebranta. That's a really great Pisco as well. That does come from Ica,
Okay.
the region we were just talking about. So you would see some similarities there, but also you would notice the difference if you were to try them side by side.
All right, well, that was good.
So let's, I always like to start off with that one. I think you'll see such a difference between the next one that we try.
As you know, I love a side-by-side.
So this next one we're going to try is called the Italia. And I would just note that it has nothing to do with the country of Italy. I always make sure to explain this to folks that this is a Muscat of Alexandria grape varietal that was brought also by the Spanish during the 1500s. But the locals started calling it the Italia because 2 Italians supposedly were the first to start selling it.
And that's so funny how those little, like, you know, mistranslations or name it after the Italian guys rather than the place it comes from, that carries down. And I'm sure there are websites right now that will say that the Italia grape came from Italy and is now used in Pisco. I mean, I think I've come across that in my research.
That's right. So it does create a little bit of, I would say, healthy confusion. But yeah, it is a Spanish grape originally.
Okay, very different nose on this one. This has definitely more what I have associated with Pisco in the past, less of that mineral type of note and more of kind of a fruitiness.
Yep.
Some floral notes for sure.
So I mentioned earlier there's 2 classes of grapes. There's the non-aromatics and there's the aromatics. This would be an aromatic.
Absolutely.
So you're going to notice totally opposite end of the spectrum, much more floral, much brighter.
Right. Like I stick my nose in here and I got to work really hard to smell anything. And in this one, it just comes to my nose. I don't have to go to it.
Yep. I think you're also going to notice some of that minerality as well because it comes from that same vineyard, but totally different flavor profile.
Yeah, but much more familiar tasting to me as Pisco. Right? If you'd given me the first one, I don't know that I would have identified it as Pisco, or I think I would have with the second one.
Sure, that makes a ton of sense.
Awesome to me to see that there's that much variation in the category.
And that's really part of why we exist, to showcase that there's such a broad range of Piscos and we want people to enjoy them. So we have these 2 as part of our core series that let you quickly see the difference between the opposite ends of the spectrum. There are 6 other grape varietals that you can make Pisco with that, in my opinion, sit somewhere in the middle. But these 2 really show you the range. Okay.
And do you guys have other, right now you have those 2, do you have other Piscos in the line as well?
Great question. So this is our core series called our single origin series, which is single vineyard, single vintage, single varietal. We have a newer series that we call the exploratory series, which is hyper limited batches. These already are very small batch to begin with, typically under 3,000 liters.
Right, this is bottle 2,920 out of 3,083.
That's right, yep. And this one is, we actually made 600 bottles of this particular vintage, so quite small. But on our exploratory series, we typically are making under 180 bottles. And these are less so what we're making as much as what we're finding. So travel.
That's what I heard on the speakeasy that I was like, that is super cool. So say more.
Yeah, so the origin of that is my business partner Ian and me, who started SUYO together. We spent a lot of time traveling around Peru and finding really awesome stuff. But what's quite common is producers might just be making it for friends and family and aren't necessarily commercializing it. So they might make a couple 100 liters. We try it and we're like, this is so beautiful. We need to bring it to market, but we're not going to have that continuity year over year.
Right.
So instead of bringing it into our single origin line, which is always going to be in the market,
blending it in some way.
These are super. Yeah, we'll do a limited release. Some of them will come up to Massachusetts, where we are now. Some of it will go to New York. Some of it will send out to the West Coast. Or in some instances, we've sent it entirely to a private group who's really into obscure agave spirits, for instance. They wanted to buy an entire release. So it's really a fun way to tell the story of what we're doing, which is traveling the country looking for unique piscos.
And it really, you mentioned agave spirits, right? So that really does sound like mezcal, right? We've all heard the stories of going through Oaxaca and visiting the mezcal palenques and, taking your plastic bottle and getting it filled up with mezcal. So it is kind of that vibe of going to the people who have traditionally been making this for, as you say, 400 years, right? And seeing what they're doing with it.
That's exactly right. And Ian and I drew a ton of inspiration from the mezcal category. We took a couple of trips to Oaxaca as we were building SUYO. And we found that we were basically already building a model that is quite common in the mezcal industry. So that was really cool validation for us, but very unique to the Pisco category. So it's been very exciting that people have drawn that parallel independently as well.
That's awesome. So before we wrap up, tell me about this lovely bird that is both here on the table and on your bottles.
Sure. So a couple quick fun facts for folks who might not be familiar with this is that the word Pisco, which is what the category is that we're talking about here today, means bird in Quechua, which is the language that the indigenous people speak in Peru.
Do we know why they used the word bird to talk about a spirit? Because it was aromatic, or like what? Do we know?
Yeah, we think we do know. So the Incan emperor at the time, right around the time that actually the grapes were brought from Spain, was an Incan emperor named Pachacutec.
Okay.
And it's said that he named the port of what is now called Pisco after all the birds that were common there, because it's such a large fishing is such a large part of the culture in the industry in Peru. A lot of birds tend to flock around the fishing ports.
Sure.
So because there's so many birds there, Pachacutec started calling it Pisco, is what they say.
The bird port.
And this wound up being the port where grapes were first brought in, and then they were actually first shipping the distillate up to San Francisco, as we were talking about during the gold rush. So they just started calling it, first it was Destilado de Pisco, coming from the port of Pisco, and then ultimately just got shortened to Pisco, which is what we have today. So that's what Pisco means, and that's the reason that we chose this bird as our logo. This, as you mentioned in a previous episode of yours, is called a huaco, which is a very, very traditional ceramic figurine that you see in Peru.
Right, and this is a huaco as well, right?
That's right.
That's the category. It's not referring to the specific shape of the figure. It's just that style of ceramic.
That's right. So huaco is basically a derivative of a word called huaca, that is a Quechua word that is meant to refer to basically anything that is important symbolically, you idolize. So there are areas in Peru you can visit that are called huacas something, and it's basically a ritualistic place that you go visit. So this is also very, very important to culture, and they called it a huaco, a derivative of that. Each region of Peru during the Incan times had an animal that represented it. And the bird was the Nazca tribe, which is where the port of Pisco is. So that's why we chose to use the bird as our logo, which is super fun. And you can actually pour liquid in and out of this.
I was just going to say, you could take, inspiration from Inca Pisco and put some Pisco into this bird and sell it. I think it would be a good marketing ploy.
We may or may not be thinking of this already, but that's a really, really good idea. And the last thing I would say that's kind of fun is that the word suyo is a double entendre. It means region in Quechua, which is this language that I mentioned that the indigenous people speak. And that's a nod to our single origin concept. But suyo also means yours in Spanish, which you may be familiar with. And that's a fun way for us to pay homage to our producers who we work with.
That is awesome. I really like how much thought you've put into the package. And the liquid is delicious. So thank you for sharing it with me. It was definitely much tastier than our Inca Pisco.
We'll just say it was very different.
No, we can say it's much tastier. But again, we don't know what this tasted like 50 years ago. So it might have been extraordinary in its time.
This is very true. We'll have to put these in a time capsule and try them in 50 years and see how it compares.
Right.
And I don't know, we'll be shooting on something else maybe in 50 years.
I hope I'm through the tiny bottles by then. Alex, where can people find out more about you and SUYO Pisco?
Thanks for asking, Tammy. You can go to our Instagram at SUYO Pisco, or you can go to our website, which is www.suyopisco.com. We have a map that shows a lot of the places where we are available. It's a little bit outdated, but gives you a good reference point. You can also purchase online as well, or just learn more about what we're doing.
Or reach out to Alex by the contact form on his website and say, please, will you come taste Pisco with me? That worked great. And if you'd like to find out more about me, you can do that at mytinybottles.com. You can also find me, of course, on social media. I'm at mytinybottles on Instagram and Facebook, and at TammyLC on Blue Sky. Leave a like, leave a comment, leave a share, all of those places around. Let us know what you think about Pisco in general. If you've tried SUYO Pisco, which one is your favorite? And I'd love to hear from you. So cheers.
Thanks for having me, Tammy. Salud.